picture that you're painting is of something which has no attributes.
No objective attributes.
And that's interesting because how could it be personal unless it had attributes?
Exactly.
Objective attributes.
Yes.
Okay, so technically we can buy that, but somehow it still sort of feels as though,
Yeah.
from where I'm sitting, that this consciousness belongs to something that's closer to this body than it is to that body, or closer to here than it is to the mountain out there.
Yes.
Now that's an interesting thing, because if in fact that's an illusion, we should be able to experientially sort that out.
Absolutely true. And what we've done so far, in some sense, is to deal with the top layer, the smallest part of the sense that I, this consciousness, am personal and limited. We've dealt with the tip of the iceberg, which is the belief that consciousness is personal.
Now we're going to give ourselves permission to investigate whether or not that's true.
Exactly as you say, we're now left with a contradiction. We've established from our own experience that we know, and when I say know now, I mean we know with the mind that consciousness cannot be personal, and yet we feel, as you say, if we're honest, and yet we feel, yes, I still feel here. I feel that you're over there. So there's a contradiction.
Right, what's going on here?
This contradiction is intolerable for anyone who is interested in the nature, because consciousness cannot be both at the same time. So a deeper level of exploration is initiated by seeing this contradiction, which is an investigation into the feeling. We've established from our own experience that we know that consciousness is not personal, and yet we feel that I, this consciousness, am located here, inside this body, or as this body. So this contradiction is intolerable.
It's either we ignore it, in which case this whole investigation is now becoming a belief as opposed to our direct experience, or we're forced to look more deeply
Yes.
at what's going on, not on the intellectual level anymore, but what's going on the feeling level of how we're experiencing life.
If we only leave it at the intellectual level, if we only leave the understanding, and it may be a genuine understanding, yes, there's nothing in my experience to substantiate the belief that consciousness is personal, then that is some degree of understanding. But nevertheless, our true feeling is that I am personal, and suffering is inherent in that position. So sooner or later, although we may have a thin layer of understanding, yes, I am impersonal consciousness, sooner or later the feelings are going to percolate up through that thin layer of so-called understanding, and they're going to cause havoc with our life.
There are lessons. I mean, there are lessons to be learned. They're demonstrating that there's something inconsistent with our understanding.
Yes. And sooner or later, this feeling of being located and limited will call for attention. And in most of us, that call for attention comes in the form of unhappiness or suffering.
And we're going to have to confront the fact that this issue has not been resolved to our satisfaction.
Let's look now at the feeling. What does this feeling that I am unlimited consist of? It's a mixture of consciousness, because consciousness is present in every experience. It would be impossible to have an experience without consciousness. So it's a mixture of consciousness plus a collection of sensations, which we call the body. And these two, the feeling I am the body, is the exclusive identification of this knowing consciousness with a cluster of sensations, because that's what the body is. Our experience of the body, if our eyes are closed, our only experience of the body is sensations. Either a single sensation or usually a network, a cluster of sensations. And what we're saying is that I, this knowing presence, is identical with this cluster of sensations, but it is not the sound of the fan over there.
Right.
It's because of this, we're saying that's obvious. You see, what I am, it's obvious to me, I am this cluster of sensation. And it's obvious to me that I am not the fan. Therefore, I am this, me, and I am not that, the world. So the world becomes everything that I am not. Everything that is not this cluster of sensations. That's one way we could define the world.
So how is it now that, as we've come to this conclusion that we're consciousness and that we have really no objective attributes at this point, how is it that we come to judge and categorize the sensations, some as being our own and some of them not our own?
We've just learned to. We've learned, our culture from a very, very early age has conditioned us to believe that we are this fragment. Our actual experience, and in fact, our experience is always that consciousness is one with the totality of our experience. That every experience, the visual perception of something on the horizon, is at the same zero distance from consciousness as the most intimate sensation. Everything is one with consciousness. That is always our experience, even if it seems that it's not. But what's happened is we have been encouraged and educated to think, no, that's not the case. Consciousness is not one with the totality of what is. It's one with a fraction of what is. And we have been rehearsing this for so long that we now think that it's so natural and normal and ordinary that consciousness is exclusively identified with this cluster of sensations, and that therefore consciousness is not everything else. This now becomes the kind of basic assumption of our culture. We mentioned early on, we think it's so obvious. We think it's such an obvious fact of experience that what we are is this body-mind, that sometimes when we hear the kind of reasoning that we've been going through now, people think, oh, no, that's very intellectual and theoretical. And it's the opposite. What's intellectual and theoretical is the idea that this consciousness is exclusively associated with a cluster of sensations. That is truly intellectual. It's never an experience.